Hello, I am Stephen Mallon, and this is Refractions. I am so glad to be back. We had a little break, but we are back live, and I am very excited about our guest today. We have the gallery directors, Sid and Michelle from Monroe Gallery. So thank you both for being here.
Hi, Stephen. It's great to see you again.
Thanks for asking us.
Absolutely. So you told me a little bit when we met at APET, but can you tell everybody else, I guess, a little bit about your history with photography?
As quickly, as condensed as possible, but we were both, this is in New York City, 1980s. We both had come from short stints with museum backgrounds, and Michelle was a working artist, and I was working in a gallery that was primarily prints and multiples, that was thinking about doing an exhibit with a photographer. And I was asked as director to meet with the photographer and see if it was something I thought the gallery could represent and show. And that photographer turned out to be Alfred Eisenstadt, the great Life magazine photographer, who at the time was well into his 80s. Michelle and I were in our 20s. And fast forward, we did the exhibit. It was smashing success. But more to the point, both Michelle and I sat across from Eisenstadt in his office at the Time Life building and were, just completely overwhelmed with the sense of the marriage of art, history, and documentary reportage of that era, and witnessing or bearing witness to the rise of fascism and what had happened in Germany in the 1930s, all the way fast forward to his long career with Life magazine. We just fell in love with the medium of photography, but more specifically photojournalism, as people like Eisenstadt had basically pioneered back in the 1930s.
We decided with what very little money we had to stop working for other people and open a gallery in Lower Manhattan, which is probably not going to be hard, right? I mean,
What could possibly go wrong?
And that was actually dependent upon Izzy coming with us, because we had, obviously in our 20s, we had no name recognition outside of some Lower East Side bars, and we needed his help, and he was keen. Well, I don't know about keen. He didn't really have a choice because we were so passionate, and we were organized. And when we presented it to him, he proposed that he would introduce us to some of his peers and colleagues that he worked with at Life, and that we could make a stable in this way of artists.
It was a very lucky time, because a lot of these photographers were quite elderly, were retired. They were very revered, still within the Time Life sort of circle. And amazingly, a lot of them still had offices at the Life building and would sort of come into the office 1 or 2 days a week just to sort of, stay in touch with things. And so, yes, we got the introductions. We approached them with the idea of doing exhibits. Most of them were incredulous. Why would anybody want to look at my pictures in a gallery? As Michelle said, we thought we, had hit the jackpot.
I mean, it never occurred to us, Stephen, that people would not be as passionate and really besotted with this intersection of history and art, and the emotional impact of a very successful piece of photojournalism. And though people certainly were not initially as passionate and over the moon, that really had no effect on us at all. That's the beauty of being in your 20s. It had no effect at all. Selling a photograph in the very beginning, we were on Grand Street in the 90s, was exceedingly difficult. I mean, I sort of joke about this, that I would have to throw in babysitting, but it really was, it was a slog.
Photography, as probably, obviously, and many of the viewers, photography has slowly crept into the mainstream. Those that are, familiar with photography as it exists today may not be able to comprehend that, in terms of the art world and the gallery world and the museum world and just a broader acceptance of photography, it was very, very narrow, beginning in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then the slice for photojournalism and historic photography,
It was non-existent.
was non-existent. I mean, you had the established masters, Weston and Ansel Adams and, Stieglitz and, all the real sort of first wave of photographers as it existed as a medium. But we thought people would have the same passion for the photography that we had. But it turned out that we sort of had to be the champions of that genre. And luckily we stuck with it and pounded the pavement. And it took a while, and I think to some extent it really took off once we made the transition and made the move to Santa Fe.
When was that?
2002. We opened in 2002 here in April.
So short story was that on Grand Street, after 9/11, we were effectively closed as a gallery. And we were only a few years in business. And we had a pretty big operation with some partners, and we were not in a position to, the rent was still due, expenses were still due.
We did qualify for a grant, but our neighbor received his grant about 14 months later. So that's a lot of rent up front, when the National Guard were the only people outside of residents allowed in our neighborhood for a time. So yeah, it became clear to us, not right away, but pretty quickly, that we had to make a move. And initially we looked in the city. Obviously our children are in the city, our families are in the city. It never occurred to us to do anything else. And we found really nothing comparable. We had a beautiful cast iron ground floor space on Grand Street. And if we had moved to the 5th floor of a Chelsea building, you would have opened the elevator and found 2 skeletons at the desk. It just would not have worked for us. We didn't have the recognition yet.
So we relocated and were open in early 2002. And just coincidentally, I think a number of factors came together. Our continued persistence. But one of the reasons we chose Santa Fe, we had visited it, but when you get into whatever statistics the art world puts out, Santa Fe is always number 2 and number 3 in terms of the biggest art market after New York City.
And that has really borne out for us.
And that was, that was a big leap of faith, but we have, to this day, after 23 years being in Santa Fe, we're constantly reminded and amazed of what a crossroads it is of the, the variety of people who visit crossing through Santa Fe. As a relatively small town. We joke that we actually see more of our New York clients for a longer period of time in Santa Fe than we used to do in New York, because they're on vacation or they're relaxed. And in New York, you've got, like, I've got 2 minutes between meetings, show me what you've got.
Yep.
But also the variety of collectors and museums and just general public. We really do have a very, very active gallery space because of the number of visitors that are walking through Santa Fe on any given day, which is a perfect platform as a gallery when you're trying to champion something. Because you have an audience, and we're unlike anything else in this city in terms of other types of art. So
were there other photo galleries already there when you arrived, or were
Oh,
you one
yeah.
of the...
Yeah, there was a good scene. COVID changed that. And we're hoping obviously that that there will be a resurgence, because we all benefit, not just from the kind of competitive spirit that makes you better at what you do, but by being a photographic destination, everyone benefits. Andy Smith had a very well-known gallery here and was very generous and a good friend to us from the moment we landed. Verve Gallery was here. They closed. Their director has opened a small photographic gallery that's wonderful. We're hoping that some other people will come in and open up.
And of course, there's the history of photography in the Southwest, and that draws a lot of visitors, and it also brings a lot of amateur photographers. There's a lot of photographic resources here, Santa Fe Photographic Workshops, the Center for Photography, which does a lot of portfolio reviews and has prizes. So
wait, Santa Fe and Center are two separate?
Santa Fe Workshops and the Center are two separate.
Have they always been separate? Why did I think that they were?
No, I think they've always been separate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But those are great resources. So yeah, it's a great photo community and a great photo destination and a great arts destination. You put that all together, and it's, as I said, it's been consistently surprising and rewarding to be here.
And you don't have to worry about parking.
Who told you that? Parking is a competitive sport here too.
It is. Oh, I take it back. I am sorry. I just assumed that it's, you've got all this space.
I know. I know. We're working on it.
Occasionally we do have people on horseback ride by the gallery, so that's always fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
So
that's traffic.
Yeah, that's traffic, but no, it's I think once we sort of got settled in Santa Fe, we really drilled, I think, a little bit more, even more specific on our mission to champion the work of photojournalists. And over the last 10 years or so, we made a very conscious effort to expand it into the more contemporary, up to the moment field, and adding representation of several working photojournalists, that are trying to make a go in this challenging world and environment now. And
some of the best photojournalism we have seen in our careers, which are now our career together is now 30 some years, is happening right now. The most extraordinary photojournalism. It's too bad that the United States does not value image-driven news the way they did in the kind of the golden years of photojournalism. Nevertheless, it's worth pursuing because it's an extraordinarily dynamic and even more mission-driven generation than it was when being a photojournalist was a viable career that could support you and a family.
It's definitely gotten much more of a challenge.
It's bleak.
Yeah.
It's bleak.
Yeah.
It's bleak for, on so many layers for photojournalists out there trying to work. It's really difficult. So it's even more important to support their work. And in many cases now, whatever we can do with print sales actually directly benefits, their ability to take assignments and to travel, because, rarely do you get a job that's going to pay you to travel and cover your expenses.
Yep, exactly. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to my conversation with Mark Peterson, one of your amazing photographers. I loved it. I have loved his work for years, and we met a couple of times in passing, but he was so open and great to hear. And I find his noir aesthetic of just that crisp imagery, black and white, or when he's delivering in color, it is so stark but beautiful at the same time, even though he'd what I consider he's photographing monsters, but they love how they look, and that's why they keep inviting him back. And I'm just like horrified.
No doubt at all. His versatility is unsurpassed. He moves through spaces so like liquid, and he's painting with his camera. So the grotesque is grotesque, and the sacred is shot in a sacred way. He's really an extraordinary artist.
Yeah.
He's something. So I think, just for everyone it sounds like it's journalistically driven. Like, how would you what's the elevator pitch for the gallery?
So, I think a lot of times the word photojournalism is a little bit difficult because
I think it's largely misunderstood.
when you say photojournalism, as if people think of war, disaster, and terrible things and often terrible pictures, but for our
you mean terrible content.
pictures of terrible things, yes. Yes, for sure. But in the arc of what we see as photojournalism, going back to sort of the way many of Eisenstadt and his colleagues taught us, in that era in the 1930s, surprisingly, most of America was illiterate. So the success of Life magazine was that a story would be told in a succession of pictures. And so anybody, no matter what their reading ability was able to pick up an issue of Life magazine, see what was happening in Hollywood, see what was happening, overseas with the kings and the queens, see what was happening with whatever the story of the week was. And it would sort of, it was a precursor to television and the internet and the whole way of getting the story. And so for us, the arc of photojournalism is the story of humanity. And that does encompass the disasters, but the triumphs and the hopes. And I think some of the best photojournalism, even in the darkest times, is reflective of that. It's
the human spirit prevailing in any circumstance. We both put together shows very similarly, which is probably why we're still doing it together. We both came from museum backgrounds, And so we understand that the audience is on, is taking a trip with the subject. And the trip can have highs and lows, as every arc of history in every story and endeavor has. And once you grab hold of your audience and you bring them up and down and up and down, and it is so thrilling. We really do have the best careers in the world, unless you like money. Okay,
One
so
little
there's
detail.
there's that, yes. But it's very rare that either one of us come into the gallery and feel like we're going to work in any traditional way that we all have an inherent understanding of. It just very rarely happens.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So can I just ask, like, with the shows and layout and everything, do you each have like your own set of responsibilities? Does it rotate from show to show? Like, do you alternate who is taking care of what, or like how do you manage that, the two of you?
We're really so lucky that it just sort of is organic, that we really do complement each other on, strengths in putting together all aspects of the business.
And one of us will lead the show. We're talking all the time. We're looking at journalism all the time. One of us will come up with an idea over dinner. And if the other is unsure, then we just challenge each other, like prove it and bring it to me. And it's super fun, actually.
And fortunately,
Do we argue at work? I think you asked that, didn't you, Stephen?
No, but you can answer.
No, we don't. Sometimes it's difficult to get a show to gel, even though you have the imagery and you have the theme, but it's trying to anticipate the audience's experience and their staying power. That's really the indication of success. If the audience will stay for the entire show, if they'll linger. So that can be a challenge, but it's separate from our partnership.
I think also, from the very day we opened in Soho initially, I don't know how to say this properly, but we wanted the feel of the gallery to be very different than the typical New York gallery experience. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, a typical New York gallery experience can be exclusionary.
Yep.
For a number of reasons. Not understanding what they just walked into, not understanding what they're looking at. Perhaps there's no wall text, perhaps there's nobody, there to even just greet them. And because we were,
Or alternately, an experience with art can have an intrusive element of a salesperson and that I would rather have an empty gallery than have someone running after a guest and intruding upon their experience. And I think both Sid and I feel that you're having your own encounter and we're available if you need us. And that's it.
and because we were a brand new startup business, and because we were presenting work that was, for all intents and purposes, new to the market, we wanted to welcome a broad swath of the public. We've always felt very strongly that the role of a gallery has many layers to it. Obviously, you have a responsibility to the photographers we represent. You have a responsibility, to pay the bills. We also have a responsibility to spread the word of the work that we're showing. And when we were in Soho and now here in Santa Fe, that means we're really welcoming to the public at large. We have had a huge success of getting involved with a lot of schools and high schools in Santa Fe. And because so much of our subject matter deals with history and in some cases contemporary history, it's a great way to bring students in to look at pictures about subjects they may be reading or learning about. And you know, we've worked out deals with people who work in the restaurant around the corner that like fall in love with a photograph. And like, I could never buy that. And we're like, let us help you figure out a way to buy that. You know, we really, you know, and at the same time, we work obviously with a lot of museums, we work with a lot of collectors, but it's about not being exclusionary and trying to, you know, really spread the word of why this medium is so wonderful and important.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
a champion for it.
I think a big part of the marketing of art relies upon you feeling that you should know what this is. And if you don't know what this is, do not ask. And that is anathema to me. I don't understand that at all. I think it's silly. And I don't think it serves the artist, and I don't think it serves the audience. It's an unnecessary device. And I don't want that. Can we swear?
Yes, 47
Okay.
times, remember?
Oh, right, 7 times.
47, you got plenty.
I don't want that bullshit in here. That's so
Yeah.
the opposite of how we feel about art and art spaces. And really, the younger the audience, the better. We want a living space. We don't want an antique store. No offense to people my age. We don't want an antique store. We want a space that begins someone's relationship with belonging in art spaces.
It's so great. You had mentioned the coming up with ideas over dinner, and were you referring to like themes about an exhibition? Because I always think about galleries primarily doing solo shows of artists, but are you sometimes doing more of like concept-based exhibitions, or is that about like how to curate a body of work from Mark?
I think it's about half and half, Stephen. We are so blessed to have quite a large group of photojournalists, and the nature of the job means that their portfolios are very diverse. And if we can think of a theme, and a lot of those themes have to do with human emotion and the drama and the opera of humanity. If we think of a theme, you can capture some of the beginnings of our family tree, the very top leaves of our tree, like Eisenstadt and Gordon Parks, and come all the way down to people that are working at this moment, covering this history. And that is a really exciting exhibit to mount, so that everyone can see the arc of history and they can see where they are in it.
Yeah, it also really helps. It really helps put even more contemporary work in context.
Yeah.
As you can see, sometimes imagery that's very similar to something from 70 years ago. But yes, I think our shows are approximately, we do 6 exhibits a year, and it's usually 50-50 between a theme or a group and a solo exhibit. But to your question initially, yes, the challenges are the same in terms of conversation about how to make it gel, even if it's a solo exhibit for an individual photographer, we're very, and I think we're very specific and very focused on how does it flow? How do you sequence it? How do you, as Michelle said, take the viewer up and down through the exhibit and really give them, sort of a workout.
A fulsome experience.
And I think that's really interesting because I believe a lot of, quite a few galleries have that same concept. And I think when it's really successful, viewers probably won't even notice it. And when it's not successful, I think you do notice it.
Well, it's either memorable or forgettable.
Yeah. You remember the really good and the really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this also comes back to what, about both of your history, about coming from the museum world, is thinking about that flow and keeping, the audience engaged. And it's not just about, slapping the work on the wall, sell, like running up to the door. Here's my card. Let me know if you got any questions. So we met at APAD, and I think you said one of my favorite lines of the year, where it's like, this is our 27th rodeo. What are some things that you look for in? Do you do any other art fairs outside of APAD?
We have done. We not currently.
Okay. What makes an art fair successful or appealing for you?
We really can't say enough about the directors of the APAD show. It's exhausting. It's so important to us. When we were located in New York, we did the APAD show. There's no possible way of having an audience of thousands of people in the span of a long weekend.
And I think it's very clear. There's actually been quite a few articles recently. The art fair world is going through a lot of changes. Has been both, economics, from the economics of it. Obviously, COVID, put a pause on a lot of them, and APAD, like all the others, sort of came back tentatively. But I think when we did do other fairs, we were always looking very carefully that it somehow aligned with our vision and our mission. In other words, it didn't commodify art, and it didn't put it up on this pedestal. And, all of a sudden now, like, when no matter what fair you're doing, the expenses are enormous, and
enormous for the fair company. It really is a skin of your teeth margin.
Yeah.
But if you're, and understandably for some fairs, for some art, and for some people, making it unreachable is part of the goal. But that never aligned with what we, what we felt art and photography should be. And so that's why we have done APAD consistently throughout our entire careers, because it is truly dedicated to the art of photography from A to Z, as you've seen at the show. Everything from the most classic, oldest, rarest forms of photography, right up to stuff that is cutting edge and far out and all that. And I think that's That's a very important platform to be a part of, because we've got a segment of the market that we want people to experience.
I mean, what makes it successful is not just a large audience, but a thoughtful, motivated audience, a space where they can linger. You know, I think art fairs can suffer from too much flash, so that it becomes a social event. And yeah, I understand the motivation to have an art fair feel like a celebration. And there's certainly a place or an evening or two for that. But we need, for our investment and for us to be able to deliver checks to the people that we've made commitments to, our photographers, we need a thoughtful, serious audience.
Yep. What's a reasonable expectation these days? Like, I know ideally, you know, it's like you've broken even on day one, but like today's market with people thinking and deciding, like, yeah, not anymore, right?
That's a good one.
Because it is marketing, right? Because people are still seeing that you're out there, and it is the reputation, you know, repetition of the reputation. You know, it's like if you show up at an art fair once, you know, you're a flash in the pan, you know, and you know, like you said, you've been established. Is it 28 years now in business, or
23 in Santa Fe, and
9 in
it
Manhattan.
wasn't quite 9, but yeah,
8.5?
yeah.
So
We'll
congratulations.
talk about it later.
You don't remember?
You know, the expectation is tough. You go, you know, you know, we're starting right now to think about what we're gonna bring to APAD, which is April 22nd, 2026. So, you know, we're 7 months out. We're only a few months since the last show. And it's an excruciating process to plan it out and to think about it. And, you know, you go in with, as you said, the expectation is, okay, you know, we want to make money. But there's a lot more components to it. As you said, it's building your reputation, it's building relationships.
And you have to look at it as a long-term investment, because the impression that you make that weekend should serve you for months and sometimes years in the future. So, you know, we have rarely, and luckily we didn't know that this was a thing, broken even on the first day. That would be rare. I mean, the expense is enormous. And if you're selling contemporary art, where the price for a piece might cover your booth, that's different.
Right.
We're selling photojournalism, and we have to prepare the artists that we take for reasonable expectations. What we're going to see our usual museums, and we're going to meet new museums. That's important to us, that this work take a place in a public institution. And we're going to expect, and rightfully so, that we have follow-up sales for months and months. And I think you had someone, Paul, like 2 years later,
Yeah,
that met us at APAD. So that it's hard to quantify what that fair brought. But it is we're always in the black. It's just that we don't know, you know, we don't know how to tell you how much, because there's no time limit to that fair.
and yeah, the fairs we've done, overall, you know, largely we walk away successful, we walk away happy.
Sometimes by like $7.
Sometimes, sometimes it's fantastic. We're in a challenging time, just overall, and that's a reality. So, your definition of success, I think, has to be adjusted a bit.
Yeah,
Still in business.
Still a business.
that's right.
I'm talking about the museums. One thing that I've been kind of struggling with a little bit is like the museums sometimes expectation of kind of like playing on the, well, it'll be good for you to have a print in our collection card.
Yes.
And as a gallery, how do you handle that, or how do you advise your artists, or how would you advise like both represented and non-represented artists about that?
Well, it has to be case by case, right? And it depends upon their commitment. So in other words, if someone comes to you and says, we're mounting an exhibition for 2027, this is the theme, these are the works we have thus far, and we would like to include this work from your gallery. That's different, right? This is not just an acquisition that goes into a drawer. It has to be a case by case and institution by institution. If we represent you, then we'll have that discussion first.
But I think it's a tricky question, because it goes beyond museums, and because we know people and we know photographers, and it's even happened to us where people come and say, hey, we'd like to put this picture here and it'll be really good exposure for you. That's the oldest line in the book. And I think photographers hear that, let me put your picture on my social media feed, and, I'll get all the likes and it'll be good for you. So you have to be very careful, especially for non-represented artists. And I haven't heard too many museums using that with
I haven't either.
with non-represented photographers or artists, and I would start with, very cautious if that's the first approach. But you have to weigh and measure. And again, we're entering into a period now where there's tremendous pressure on museums in terms of what they can or can't show or acquire. We have a number of photographers that we've negotiated very large acquisitions into very major museums, and they're petrified that they're going to be deaccessioned because it's too controversial now, which I don't think is going to be a thing, but that's the reality of the environment we're in.
You can imagine that Sid and I are big believers in paying for art. If you value something and you'd like to have it to continue to exist, you pay for it.
Pony up. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not, your social media following notwithstanding, this person needs to eat.
There was a great video done a number of years ago where somebody went into like real life situations and tried to negotiate like a creative would.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I want the steak. I'm going to pay for the hot dog.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And the chef is kind of like, but it's a steak. And it's like, yeah, I know that. And then they did it also like in a video rental where they were going to go in. It's like, no, I'm going to keep renting, but this first rental, I just want you to give to me.
Right.
And the guy, this is back at like a Blockbuster-esque era, and the guy is just kind of staring at him. And I think they also tried it in like a hair salon. I'll try to find it on YouTube. It's just so good.
Do send it to us. It is, I mean, you can be rather good-natured. I think at a certain point, you've seen it so many times in big and small ways that it can be amusing because it's not going to happen. So,
Yeah, you can go ahead and give me your best shot,
Yeah,
but it's
give-
not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
it's not gonna happen, but go on.
Keep trying. It's cute. We're having a wonderful time. We've only got a little bit of time left. I guess we had talked briefly about what is the current show that's in the gallery?
The current show is a solo exhibition by a Navajo photojournalist, editor, photographer, Eugene Tapahi. And his project, which came about because of the devastation of COVID, in regards to the medicine of the jingle dress, which was an Ojibwe curative medicine, this dress and the dance that is associated with it for the Spanish flu. That is its origin.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And the project evolved, starting with COVID, but it continues to this day. The jingle dress, as Michelle said, when worn during the Spanish flu and danced in, was said to bring healing to those sick with the flu. So this began as a project for healing his family that was on the Navajo Nation that he couldn't get to, that were sick with COVID. And it started with two of his daughters that were home from school, from college because of COVID, and two sisters that were friends of his daughters, also home.
They were kind of refugees because they couldn't return to the Navajo Nation. And then the project, Eugene has always been an activist. He's an extraordinary human in so many ways, and we've learned so much about him. But he has always done quite a lot of activism around the crisis, which is in epidemic proportions, of the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And the young women, his daughters and their friends, also wanted to have that intersect in the healing medicine of the jingle dress, so that their sisters and mothers and aunts would not be alone, missing and forgotten.
And so the project incorporates the women in these regalia and dresses in locations that ironically also are all former Indigenous lands. And so it's when you're confronted with these large format pictures, you're struck by the beauty, and then you start to see the symbolism and the messaging. And it's a very powerful show for the time we're in.
Did you have a couple of these in your booth?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was sort of the premiere.
And Eugene was there. I don't know if you had a chance to meet.
We did. We met briefly. I think.
thought so, yeah. It is at once, it's heartbreakingly beautiful. And so now you've already been seduced. And then you understand that this is a very sobering project. And the themes and the elements that Eugene and the women, and it really truly was a collaboration. What they have woven into each photograph is extremely considered. And it takes a little while in your encounter to understand it. And it's very quiet and really humbling. We don't want to take it down.
Yeah, we're at,
But we have a great show coming up. So
we're right at the end. We just tacked on 2 more weeks till September 28th. But it's been a wonderful experience.
and then we welcome a retrospective by Ed Cashy, which is just, you know, you couldn't ask for more than that. He's so talented, and we're very excited about hosting him again.
This is not his first solo show with you, right?
No, we had a show for his last book about 2 years ago.
It was about closer to 3 years ago when his last book came out, but he has another book coming out, which is more of a career retrospective. And so this exhibit is going to be follow the lead of the book and sort of be highlights of what's been a 30+ year career as a photojournalist, all across the country, all across the world, and through so many, epic stories.
Delivering extraordinary drama, chaos, and heartbreak in the most beautiful way. He's such a successful storyteller with his camera, and it'll be a beautiful show, very moving show.
For sure. So I guess my last question, if we can, is just so, and maybe you probably had to answer this a little bit, but so where do you find new talent? Like, I guess referrals, some of the other artists that are showing at APAD. Where else do you source?
We look every day, as Michelle said. We're looking.
We're very involved with photojournalism as a source of news. And it's hard to describe, Stephen, what we're looking for, because you need different elements that support each other. All of these images support each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So even when you have an extraordinarily difficult image where people might recoil, that supports an accompanying image of mother and child fleeing that particular. So they really, they all work together. And how do we find them? We mostly already know them. We're looking for a long-term commitment, and we're looking for a long-term photojournalist, not a photojournalist that may have recently arrived with one great image, but our eyes are on that person. And we're rooting for them.
That's the seed.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, we also are, we have the challenging problem of not always being able to like jump out and approach someone, because we're so fortunate with the archives that we represent, and we're extremely sensitive, that everybody that we do represent is actively represented and seen somehow in our gallery environment. And so we're not just sort of chasing what's the next thing, because that's not fair to who we've already got commitments to. And that it also takes time to translate from, the journalism and the news sphere to a gallery sphere.
Yeah, I was just going to say, our responsibility is to cultivate an audience, to educate a potential collector, and to justify to that collector why we represent this person. So you saw this image 2 years ago. Let me show you what is more current. It's a relationship. That's our responsibility. We can't ethically take on everyone that we think is an extraordinary talent. It's not possible. So it's better, I think, to do a better job for the commitments that you've made than think, oh, this is really a big theme in all of our lives right now, in capitalism broadly. It's all based upon what you don't have. Therefore, that's what you should get. And we try and come back to, what do we have? And how can we do this better?
I love that. For the artists that are already in the gallery, that is fantastic. Thank you both. I love talking with you, and I feel like we are just getting close to it, because I think that there's another show coming on. So I think I'm going to have to call it, but let's do it again. I'll find a theme, or when one of the books or solo shows, we'll have
it.
one of your artists on.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah. So thank
And
you
I
both.
still have like 6 more swears.
Yeah, plenty. You've got plenty. We'll roll them over onto the next one. They're kind of like frequent
Okay,
flyer miles.
okay, that sounds
We'll
great.
do an episode of swears.
We will do that. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Monroe Gallery, Michelle and Sid, for being here. This has been really enjoyable, and thank you for kicking this back off. And I guess I will see you both in April at the Armory.
Thank you so
Really
much.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.